Donald Trump's expanding defense team is beginning their case in the Senate trial. This team is not small, 10 lawyers now making the case, yet the man who has become known as Trump's most famous lawyer has been totally left out. Rudy Giuliani snubbed, a choice that's all the more glaring considering reports that Giuliani was privately lobbying for a role and then went public too.
I'd love to try the case. I don't know if anybody would have the courage to give me the case. But if you give me the case, I will prosecute it as a racketeering case, which I kind of invented anyway. So it's been 30 years ago, but let's see if I can still do it.
Let's see. The reference to 30 years is actually telling because for all the emphasis on Giuliani as a prosecutor or a mayor, when his handling of 9/11 saw his approval double to 79% and he drew praise from everyone from Oprah to top Democrats, remember, Giuliani has not been in public service or in courtrooms for a long time, which brings us to this timely special report right now with Donald Trump on trial and Giuliani MIA on the Senate floor. Because while Trump is taking risks with a legal team that includes all sorts of controversial figures, Giuliani still proved to be too much. So to understand how Giuliani got Trump impeached, you have to see how he has been cashing in on his long ago work, his long ago public service for a long time. Rudy Giuliani formed companies to capitalize and monetize his credentials after 9/11. There was a security consulting company, Giuliani Carrick LLC. That name would later change under duress. And Giuliani Partners, which consulted for clients from Mexico City to Qatar. And he created an investment banking firm. And he joined a Texas law firm that rushed to include his famous name and add it to its nameplate. Millions and millions poured in. And Giuliani had a specific pitch that hiring him in this new private sector role would kind of deliver his greatest hits from the public sector. And that included his business partner and former top employee, Bernie Kerik, who leapt from relatively low-level work to commanding the nation's largest police force, all thanks to a Giuliani appointment. And after 9/11, Giuliani also pushed Kerik for a federal post in the Bush administration, running DHS, which would have given Kerik power to steer federal contracts to companies that also did business with Giuliani, and it seemed to work at first.
Bernie Kerik is one of the most accomplished and effective leaders of law enforcement in America. As police commissioner on September the 11th, 2001, Bernie Kerik arrived at the World Trade Center minutes after the first plane hit. The resolve he felt that morning will guide him every day on his job. And every first responder defending our homeland will have a faithful ally in Bernie Kerik.
I would like to thank and recognize those whose love, support, and sacrifice have brought me to this day. My friend and mentor, Mayor Rudolph W. Giuliani.
With friends like Giuliani, you can move up fast, but that also brings scrutiny. Kerik's nomination was spiked within a week, and the former top cop found himself indicted by the feds.
Rudolph Giuliani's former right-hand man was formally arraigned Friday on corruption charges. He accepted $255,000 in renovations to his home from a contractor, then tried to convince city regulators that the contractor was not connected to the mob and should be hired for city contracts.
Conspiracy, wire fraud, mail fraud, evading taxes on $500,000, lying to the IRS, lying on a loan application.
Bernard Kerik could be facing prison time after pleading guilty to 8 felonies. The former New York City police commissioner admitted Thursday he lied to the White House. He also admitted to lying about hiding income from the IRS and faking a charitable contribution.
That's pretty striking history. Why are we talking about it right now? Well, this is where Giuliani's approach is echoing in the open trial of the president. Because just like Giuliani pushed Lev Parnas when it seemed convenient and profitable to him personally and is now running from him, well, back then, Giuliani, also a Republican candidate for president, bailed on Kerik, his mistake.
I think that voters should look at it, and what they should say is, in that particular case, I pointed out that I made a mistake. I made a mistake in not clearing him effectively enough. I take the responsibility for that.
Now, look. That was an important and damaging admission because Giuliani was saying that after having stood by Kerik running NYPD, making all the big decisions about his constituents, New Yorkers' safety, and then pushing him to be in a key role for all of Americans' safety, and only later buckled when outside reporting and this pressure became too much for Giuliani to bear personally. And then he ran from their joint venture that I mentioned to you. He rebranded Giuliani Carrick LLC as Giuliani Security and Safety. And the New York Times has reported on Giuliani for decades, the paper documenting the concern among those around Giuliani that those errors persisted because he'd been fixated on power, a temptation that, when combined with his new lust for money, undercut his judgment. He became a, quote, grasping businessman whose own allies were worried as he became extremely materialistic and almost money-grubbing. That's the view of Giuliani's own friends, and it may speak to how he could take hundreds of thousands of dollars from an individual like Lev Parnas, a business choice, make no mistake, that blew up not only in Giuliani's face, but in the face of his most treasured, most famous presidential client, Donald Trump. And now Giuliani's trying to wipe away their work together like another Bernie Kerik nameplate, lamenting, quote, this very sad situation as Trump allies come out and try to attack Parnas's credibility. So while this trial of Donald Trump may be unpleasant for Donald Trump, it is still showtime for all the president's favorite lawyers, the ones from TV, the ones from the 90s, the ones who are so vital to the case Trump wants them to make on air. He will even take on their baggage from the Jeffrey Epstein debacle. But the man who has done the most TV lawyering for Donald Trump, who's been the most brazen, most repeatedly, most recently in the president's defense, with everything he's done and all the explaining he has to do, there is still no room on this large team for Rudy Giuliani. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.